it was only a year ago. We're like, okay, we got to find something. You got to have everything lined up. You need to like have your money ready. You got to have financing good, inspection status. If you can get it early, they're probably available from the listing agent. To now, it's like, don't worry, guys. What building do you like? Which one you want? You want these ones? We'll do this one. Good morning, investors. Bradley here from Watson Estates, and welcome. Today's a special day on our show because it's TrebStats Day. I don't know about you guys, but this is one of the days I look forward to most on our show. If there's something you want to catch, it's definitely what has been the historics of our marketplace. History is the best indication of future. So today we're going to start off talking about the difference in the condo space versus the freehold space. I went through many articles so that you don't have to, and to share with my clients as well. And then I want to transition into what is the future as we round into the end of 2020 and into 2021. What are the pros, the economists, and the experts saying comes next? And to also wrap this all up, a big part of this conversation is part of CMHC. This idea that they made their lending guidelines stricter back in July. Well, we're starting to get some stats on if that is in fact pushing Canadians into riskier lending practices. I want to talk about all these things today on the show. And if you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe to our channel. If you're following us on YouTube, hit that like button. And if you're following us on podcast channels, please leave us a 5-star review and go back and download the last 5 episodes. Whatever it takes, it helps the channel. And we're going to continue to have bring you guys the latest news. I don't know about you guys, but I listen to a lot of content myself, and I have a lot of fun. And it's probably because I like my own jokes. And a lot of people like to laugh at me laughing at my jokes, so it works out quite well. So let's jump into the news today, but I like to keep things light in the spirit of good jokes. You know there's a bad one always coming around the corner. Well, right now we've got the swine flu hitting Alberta. If COVID wasn't enough and, forest fires and murder hornets and you name it, a U.S. election going off the rails, well, you now have a swine flu making itself known in Alberta. And it reminds me of back in 2017 out in Saskatchewan, that guy, remember he got trampled by pigs? I don't know about you guys, but I'll tell you the story later. It's a real bore. I told you, these are the kind of jokes you're going to get. All right, so let's jump into, I wanted to break down the market. Again, I've gone through a number of articles. I'll leave them down in the comments below, the ones that I narrowed down as the best. And the best being that they're not all single-handedly running the show. You need to put them all together. You need to kind of look at it from different angles, and they all have real goodies. And I'm going to bring to you today on the show those goodies. And I want to break it down to condos and freehold. If you've seen any of these articles, you can see the clear stories in the condo space. So I want to start there. What is happening in condos? And there's actually a real interesting dichotomy starting to form within the condo space itself. So here's an article from Financial Post to start us off. The article of the day: Canadian real estate landscape shaken to its core with downtown Toronto condo sales falling. Oh, why am I laughing at that? I laugh at my voice. Every so often I'll hit like this, really, like falling. Sorry, guys. I'm not laughing at you condo owners. I'm really not. I care for you guys. Well, I think it's important that the big things I got out of this article was, number one, that the downtown core, this is key, was the hardest hit segment. Toronto Central 416 area codes were the only segment of its housing market to register a decline in the number of sales in October, falling 8.5% compared to the same month last year. So when we look at the entire landscape of the GTA housing market, it is only the downtown condos that have had a decline in the number of sales, and not a small decline, 8.5%. It's quite substantial. Despite the sales drop for downtown condos, prices are still up, registering a slight 0.8% increase. And if you've been following our show, that's nothing impressive. That number seems to be going down every single month. And that's because you would be accurate in saying since April, and since there was a buying opportunity, if you missed out, prices went up, but they pretty quickly started coming down in the condo space. We've kind of mapped that out through the second half of 2020. So this is an ongoing trend. Yes, there's an increase, but there's absolutely a decrease and a declining every single month price point for the condos, as we've predicted for months, and as I'm predicting will continue for the next couple months probably. In Toronto suburbs, okay, so in the suburbs, here's the dichotomy, not downtown core. Going to the outskirt communities, condo sales picked up. They went up 28%. Not down 8.5%, up 28%. And prices rose 7%. So I think it's important that there's a bit of a clarification that starts to happen now in the condo space. If you're right downtown, you're still in the middle of this, right? You're still in the middle of it. But if you're outskirts, you're in the suburbs, Not so much. In fact, your numbers are seeming to line up more with low rise in a lot of ways. There's still a lot of potential in those spaces. They even say here in the article, mirroring a pattern of more sales and higher prices for larger homes across the region. Here's a quote from Robert Hogue, Hogue, chief economist or economist at Royal RBC. Suburban areas that once lagged desirable city addresses are now roaring hot as home buyers wearied, ouch. Home buyers wearied by lockdowns seek bigger backyards and larger living space. It's all about space, guys. It's all about space. But there really is a new split that's formed. And I think this is the first time I'm kind of announcing on the show. I think it's important we recognize there is a low rise and there is a condo space. And this is where the city is. This is where the news is. The main news outlets are talking about condos versus low rise or freehold. But I think it's important that we also, I want to be a step ahead. I think it's important we note the difference in the high rise segment between downtown and these suburb communities. It's not the same. It's not the same. This is the first and only article, by the way, that I picked this up today. So there's not a lot of news talking about this split that's happened, but I think it's important that we as investors are ahead of the curve. And so, you know that this little piggy went to this and this little piggy went to that. I tell this jokes. It's not a joke. It's like a rhyme to my kids all the time. But when it comes to downtown condos, this little piggy had a downtown condo, and he called the wambulance. Actually, the ambulance. Both. Can we call both? The crying piggies. But here's the takeaway from this article, and it's great. It's a great read. While Toronto's housing market overall continues to post impressive gains compared to last year, signs of a slowdown are starting to emerge. Average prices across all property types managed a slight 0.3% increase in October from September. Think of that, guys, because we were just talking about number of sales. But when we talk about price, overall, the average price of all home types are actually up. Increase, yes. I mean, it's pretty much nothing. 0.3%. They're flat, okay? They're flat. And they post an outright decline month over month from October from September. I don't know. Anyways, point is it's flat. I'm not even going to read that over again. Point is, purchase prices across the GTA are flat. In both these months, the total number of home sales fell compared to the month prior. Treb data shows. So the key takeaway that they're giving here is that the sales activity, things are slowing down. They're cooling off as far as price goes, even in the GTA, like even in the 905. We see a lot of activity year over year, but we don't really have like this tremendous growth in price that we've experienced in past months. It seems to be coming down a bit, which is good. I mean, that really is a good thing. We'll talk about that later. There's another article from blogto.com, investors desperately trying to ditch Toronto condos they bought pre-pandemic. You can see it's a totally different angle. I think it's a great article. So I want to start off with the question, why is there downward pressure in the condo space? Well, with rents at record lows and supply only growing, it's never been a better time to rent a condo in Toronto. And we've talked about that on the show too. But buying one, on the other hand, may not be the best investment for the exact same reasons. When I get someone calling me these days and saying, hey, I want to buy a condo in Toronto, and some of you investors out there, you're realtors, you're thinking like, man, I wish that happened to me. I have people coming to me like that. And I'm saying to these guys, boy, are you lucky. Like, do I have a deal for you? Feel like these like shisty like watch salesmen. With thousands of former Airbnbs flooding the long-term rental market due to the house crisis paired with new tighter restrictions on vacation rentals in the city, it's not only rents for condo units that have been dropping, but sales prices too. Sales prices too. And then one of the things they point here that's different from our last article is assignment sales. I get a lot of pre-construction guys. In fact, I've actually been talking recently with a lot of people who have invested in pre-construction over the years, and a lot of them have lost a lot of money. And it's a very risky environment to buy pre-construction. I mean, if it's for you, it's great. Some people build a living off that, but they're really feeling it now. And it's led to a new opportunity, not a pre-construction purchase opportunity, which I think is there too, because there's a lot of incentives we see. I think the builders are getting a little bit of a choke out here. But the assignment sales, the ones that have already been sold in the hands of buyers that haven't closed yet, these assignments, there's a tremendous opportunity this article points to. It seems that now investors are scrambling to sell off their buyers' rights to their condos before the deals close via what are called assignment sales, which are not a common practice in the industry. I mean, they kind of are, and can either be a sign of a market that is hot, and that's where we've seen it. That's what's so fantastic about this topic. We've seen a lot of assignment sales. It's like this kind of contract flipping. These like, your investors are running up the price before it closes and not having to pay closing costs. It gets passed to the last guy. You're just passing paper. That's the idea of an assignment. So that's indicative of a hot market. But now it's actually indicative of the opposite, a complete lack of confidence in a precarious market. How interesting are these times? And now we can see a market that you flip contracts when things are great, but all of a sudden we're needing to flip these contracts when things aren't so good. Players due to close on condos in the near future are now, quote, absolutely shook and affected by the pandemic and what it has done to the rental market. That is what is pushing them to assign. That comes from a real estate brokerage, REC. And they added that assignment sales are now making up 2 times as many of their firm's transactions as they did pre-COVID, and now comprising around 20-25% of pre-construction sales. I guess it's a big deal, guys. This assignment thing is a big deal. It was only a couple months ago. I had a lot of comments in our YouTube saying, hey, is there a deal in pre-construction? Yes, there is. But what did I say? Those you listeners who were here, what did I say? Did I not say, give it a couple more months? I said that. And if you're going to close on a pre-construction condo, an assignment, if you wanted a deal closing right away, not a great opportunity. The better opportunity was if there's something a little bit later. They're later as people continue kind of boiling in this fear that, oh my goodness, I'm going to be closing on something I don't want. Well, if you want it, there's a tremendous buying opportunity to take this property off their hands. So here are the concerns this article closes. A record 23,000 new units hitting the market this year alone. Immigration down and vacancy rates skyrocketing. Those are some of the threats that they point to. Another great article. Now, again, you guys can go and read all of these things if you want, but why would you? It takes me hours to put these together for you. I say hours, but I've gotten it down to a bit of a streamline to get for you the best stuff on the market. Okay, there's another Star article. I'll give you the highlights from that called Toronto Housing Prices Hit New Record with Detached Homes Averaging 1.2 million. This is the article. We're going to segue from the condos into the low-rise space, guys. We're going to close with condos on this. Condo listings more than doubled. Condo listings more than doubled. Woo! Year over year. Not a surprise. I mean, we've seen that trend happening over the last couple of months, and it's going to continue. There's no numbers, by the way, here on months of inventory, but months of inventory, if we see it over 6 months, like if these homes are sitting a while, then that's indicative of a buyer's market. The problem is we've only been dealing with COVID for a limited period of time, not to mention people, and we've talked about this in pad podcasts. There goes my tongue again. We've talked about this idea that people take the house off the market and they reset their months of inventory anyways. These numbers are all skewed. The reality is we're in buyer's territory. No question on the condo space. We've been here for a couple months now. Nice of you news outlets to join us. Now, overall, though, as we segue into, speaking of segue, I don't see those anymore. Like, where did they go? Segue. Overall, the average price for all resale houses and condos rose 13.7% year over year. Okay, last month they're at $968,000 overall. So overall, we see the resale house prices increase 13.7, again, a declining each month. And I'm really, really, really hoping prices come down in the winter. I really do. Because this is just crazy. This is crazy. But low-rise units are like a tasty cooked sweet potato, and downtown condos are like a flying pig. One is a heated yam, and the other is a yeeted ham. For those of you who don't know what yeeted is, it's like thrown. It's like kids slang. Anyways, yeeted. Oh, the things you learn when you lead a youth group on Thursdays. Happening tonight, actually. Freehold. Okay, detached houses listed last month of a year-over-year increase of 6.9%. That's an increase year over year. Detached house sales for 1.2%. This is Freehold on average, a 14.8% increase this year. So we see obviously the numbers in the low rise segment outperforming. Does that really surprise you? It doesn't surprise me. And sales were up 33.9%. The 905 though wins. The 905 saw the greatest growth in detached sales, up 39% compared to 16.9% in the city of Toronto. Oh, you guys only increased by 19.6%. You Toronto, you're not so good, are you? In the 905 area, house prices rose 18%. Again, these things, keep in mind, month over month, we're not seeing a whole lot of change. But when it comes year over year, everything seems fantastic because we're really riding on the stats, the success of the last couple months. So I am far more concerned with the month over month and wanting to see that number come down than I am about the year over year. Hopefully this kind of explains what I'm talking about here, why things are flat, but yet they're increasing. But it's important that we notice the 416 is still good, okay? Inside Toronto's borders, detached prices grew 11.2% year over year. And actually, we've seen that number kind of declining. We've talked about that too. I haven't actually dived deep into that numbers, but we will. In the next few days, we'll talk deeper into each of these categories. Now, longer term in the GTA, one of the things worth noting, if we're considering what comes next before we kind of roll into that, is immigration, right? We just had that announcement that the government wants to bring in 400,000 plus per year for the next 3 years. They're increasing their goals. The goals are higher and higher and higher. Before that, they only wanted 1 million in 3 years. Now we're talking 400,000 per year. A big jump. Another article, more nuggets of gold. CP24, Toronto home prices rise 13.7%. People are choosing space. I thought this was interesting. Simcoe County has risen their prices year over year 20%. Durham, this is benchmark, by the way, benchmark prices. We won't get into what that is, but it's more specific to housing type. Durham region has increased 18%. But when we look at the benchmark price in the city of Toronto, it's 7%. 7% from last year. So when we go based on benchmark, we see clearly these outskirt communities, people are choosing more space. This shows a key lesson they say in real estate. The cities that have population actually, sorry, I say they say, but this is actually my note. This is my note. There's a key aspect to investing in real estate. And that is, and if you were to just invest on this principle, you would be incredibly successful as an investor. Forget all these extra numbers. There's a lot of numbers. There's a lot of things you got to factor in. But a very good primary indicator is, are people moving there? Is there a population inflow? And if we just look at what's happened during COVID, you can see why these outskirt communities, these exurbs in the suburbs, are doing better relative to Toronto. It's the population out and inflow, this movement of people, something to keep in mind. And so the real question is, are people ever going to come back to Toronto? That's why that's the real question. And my belief is yes, but not everybody's belief is yes. And now when we look at condos, month of inventory, they say in past years, hot sellers markets, condos were selling in 3 to 5 days. But now they're selling 30 to 60 day cycles. And we all know they're relisting them. So they're not even selling that fast necessarily. You can literally go into a building and look at like 10 units. I'm telling clients now, instead of think of the difference here. It was only a year ago. We're like, okay, we got to find something. You got to have everything lined up. You need to have your money ready. You got to have financing good, inspection status. If you can get it early, they're probably available from the listing agent. To now, it's like, don't worry, guys. What building do you like? Which one you want? You want these ones? We'll do this one. And I'll tell you, it's making showing super easy. It's literally like, pick what's your favorite building. And we literally would just do 10 showings in one building. And what a difference. What a transition we've experienced. And that trend continues. Year-to-date home sales. Treb's chief market analyst, Jason Mercer, said, so here's the conclusion. Year-to-date home sales through October were above last year's levels. Year-to-date. Why does that matter? Well, a couple of months ago, we noticed that it hadn't yet caught up. And why this is kind of like what this is kind of saying in a lot of ways is that there was a lot of demand in the spring and it got pushed back into later in the year. Well, in theory, with this demand now that we've caught up in the number of sales from 2019, that would conclude that the pent-up demand is done. Well, that's not what they say. They say we have not accounted for all the pent-up demand that resulted from the spring downturn. Expect record or near record home sales for the remainder of 2020. So according to Treb, we're not there yet. Yes, we've passed the bare minimum from 2019, but we're not done. There's more. There's more pigs in the pen. Now, here's one. I think this is our last one. Yes, this is our last one, guys. So here's, and we're going to go through this one really quick. Yahoo Finance. Okay. When it comes to home prices, I think it's important to note that high home prices have inflated the figures. This is kind of something that I'm noticing in what they're saying here. Stronger sales for higher price homes push the average selling price of all housing types to 13.7%. When we look at the benchmark, though, the benchmark price is 10.8. So we see this skew that's happening because the high-end homes are selling more. And we actually, our next guest next week, we have someone coming in to talk about luxury real estate. So watch out for that. They're actually an HGTV star. So we're going to talk a little bit about the luxury real estate because they're doing quite well. And as these units are selling, it's bumping up that price, that average sale price, because each individual unit is higher. The biggest increase, they say, from a composite benchmark standpoint was Durham at 18.2%. And to wrap it all up, Jason Mercer once again says, expect record or near record home sales for the remainder of 2020. Here's our conclusions. I'll tell you, once again, I'll say it. I'm just praying. I'm a praying man. And I am praying that prices come down slightly over the winter. That's it all. Please. But guys, I'll tell you this. Please don't, at the same token, don't jump ship as soon as prices come down a little bit. Oh my goodness, here's the end. The end is near. I can't believe it. There's still, despite what 2019 brought us last year, there's still seasonality. It matters. No question the real estate market is hot. I don't know about you, but I'm baking. All right. Okay, so we're going to move on to our next topic. What comes next? So with all of these things, it's important that we know where we came from. But really, that's just the bare minimum. Where do we go next? What's the future? Tell me, Brad, what's in your crystal ball? Well, I think a great article to have this conversation is torontostories.com called Shifting Home Buying Behaviors, Immigration Continues to Impact Canadian Housing Market. What they do in this article, by the way, I saw it a couple days back in RBC. See, the thing is, there's so many articles, hard to get through them, but I did see this. I didn't think it added much value, but I like the angle Toronto Stories take, so we're going to bring it up here. RBC senior economist Robert Hoagie, they recently published a 7 ways the pandemic is affecting the country's housing market document. And I saw that, and it overlapped a lot of stuff we were talking about, so I didn't dive too much into it, but they take some of the highlights here. Whether the changes are permanent or transitory is an open question, but one thing is certain, 2020 has been a year like no other for Canadian housing markets, says Hoagie. To get a better sense of what's to come in the remainder of 2020 and in the many months to follow, the 7 highlights include the most obvious challenges at the forefront. And they say now hot markets for home buyers seeking more space to work and live. That's number 1. Number 2, downtown condo markets, expensive rents are now flooding supply. That's number 2. And number 3, lack of immigration that typically fuel the demand for housing of all types. So these are the key things. So let me dive a little bit below the surface here. When it comes to affordability, they note that the pandemic has made it, quote, more affordable to own a home as a result of the Bank of Canada lowering its overnight rate close to 0. And it plans on doing that for the next few years. Things aren't going to change. This is an interesting point. Hoagie says these combining factors have slightly reduced your mortgage payment on a home price at market value, despite prices continuing to rise. So the price of that property has gone up, 20%? Average prices, 18 to 20%. Meanwhile, it's cheaper than ever. Your mortgage payment is less. What a broken system. What a powerful thing bringing interest rates down. And you think it's going to be reversible? I don't. I certainly don't. And what's happened, some of the highlights on why things are accelerating the way they are is, number 1, more money for Canadians. Just a reminder, we've talked about this before. Canadians received $56 billion in coverage for CERB. Meanwhile, they were shortfall only $23 billion. So they made a nice little bit of money off of the future taxpayers' back. And household disposable income spiked 11%. Household income spending was up. It was up. Woo! Condo completions. Another angle on why condos are getting beat up. Uncertainty is flagged in the condo listings that there's a total of 6,800 new condominium apartments still reaching completion in Q3 2020, bringing total year-to-date completion to 47% higher than a year ago. Wow. Right? 150% increase from last year. Think about that. What's more, Urbanation says there are an additional 5,400 units scheduled to be completed in Q4. That's a lot more. That's like, okay, listen to these numbers. Up until this point, 6,800. Okay, in the last quarter, we're planning 5,400. What a jump. Like you thought we were already beating numbers. This comes as condo resale listings in the city of Toronto rose 134% in September over the previous year. No wonder condo owners are freaking out. And that's not even getting into Airbnb. We didn't talk about that. We've talked about that in past podcasts. Regulation is going to cause a whole lot of problems, especially for people who I'm so thankful when I hear from people that say, you know what, Bradley, I listened to your podcast and I got out of Airbnbs. I was doing Airbnbs, or I was doing, I had a condo rental, or anybody that was able to jump ship and save themselves before it sank. Good on you. Good on you. Not only are you someone who listens, but you're also a doer, and that's what makes you successful as an investor. Now, immigration. Lack of immigration has been a major impact on Canada's housing market. No question. In the second quarter of 2020, the number of new permanent residents plummeted 64%. See, and I heard people saying it was 64% of the total, but now I'm hearing it plummeted 64%, which actually makes more sense. It sounds like the majority aren't showing up, right? Well, listen to this. And the result was dramatic. The total net migration, people moving out versus moving in, net migration collapsed 94%. So in other words, immigration is shot. Just as I pretty much expected, and as you guys probably expect too. Like, how are people going to come here? A lot of the permanent residents we did have were just registering, but they had already traveled here pre-COVID. Now that they're all kind of registered, now what? What are you going to do? I'm curious to see what the plan is to get these 400 immigrants per year. I don't know, man. I don't know. But they're increasing the target between 2021 to 2023, and we talked about that. So far, one of the worst economic crises to hit the world in decades has been unable to burst the bubble on Canada's housing market. What bubble? Oh, Bradley, you can't say that. I mean, we all know there's a bubble. We know there's a bubble, right? There's a bubble. I don't know. It didn't burst. But to make it fair, Nor has most bubbles around the world, like bubbles, again, assuming the term bubble, whatever that looks like to you. And I know a lot of people have explanations on what a bubble looks like, but there they say are signs that this pace is slowing, very much so in Toronto's core. Absolutely. Absolutely. What goes up must come down. Unless it's real estate, then it's probably going up again shortly after. One thing is for sure, though, winter has always been a slower time for the market. Time to see if COVID follows that rules. So again, let's see what happens in the winter. And it's important that we don't get our panties in a bunch if prices go down. I think it's important if prices are going up that we really pay attention to that, because that I think is more surprising. But it's really not until the 5th month of the year that we really let the pigs out. It's called mayhem. I like that. I think that's my favorite one today. Okay, hot topics. Some hot topics for us before we get into our last talking about CMHC and how they're destroying their own business. There's a teaser for you. The Greenbelt. A couple days ago, we talked about these wetlands, right? We talked about the wetlands and how they're just building, and they're doing some things called MZOs. Go back and check that out if you missed it. MZOs, right? This idea that the government is they're just saying, screw permits, screw consultations, screw this, screw that, screw you. I'm building it anyways. And now they haven't touched the Greenbelt, but they're now squashing the wetlands, and the Ford government is taking a lot of liberties to do this since they began a couple years ago. I think they had like 30 of these, which is just like unprecedented in the number of this abuse, this MZO abuse. Well, if people weren't angry, now action is starting to happen. Linda Pym, an environmental biologist and planner who was appointed to sit in the advisory committee in 2018, said she'd been concerned with the increasing use of ministerial zoning orders, or MZOs, by the government over the past 2 years. She said this in a letter: "I cannot in all conscience continue to sit on the Greenbelt Council, which has provided you with its best advice on urban and regional planning issues in the Greenbelt and the entire greater Golden Horseshoe, advice which seems to me to have not been given due consideration." So the advice of these councils that are there to protect our natural environment, to protect these, the ones that, the angry bodies, protect my land, one with the land, right? These guys are not happy. And people who were appointed by a Ford government are saying, screw this, I'm out. MZOs is there to quickly address housing supply. That's the idea. Like, we're going to bypass, we're going to get it done. We're going to address this housing supply. But more and more, it would seem people are thinking it's just putting lipstick on a pig. You know what they call that? Ointment. Of course, if you guys missed the U.S. election, it began as what's a quick sport? Let's say baseball. Started as a baseball game. And some people are like, I hate baseball. It'll take forever. Well, try watching cricket. The U.S. election has turned into a cricket sport. All right, so 50-50 at this point. We don't know who the winner's going to be. I think last I heard Biden was in the lead, but who knows? I mean, really, who cares? The result is going to be the Canadian value of the dollar is going to go skyrocketing as spending continues in the U.S. and hopefully stops here in Canada as well. The potential for unrest in the U.S., I think, might be inevitable, and there's going to possibly a push to immigration in Canada. Civil unrest down there, though, is absolutely cray-cray. Protesters versus cops. Did you see what happened? Right? Did you see what happened to the pig down there last week? Boy, I wish I never sausage a thing. Sausage a thing. I love breakfast sausage. It's like the most dangerous thing to your health. Oh, I love meat. CTV News, though, they talk about, so they're kind of talking the high-level officials in our government, specifically Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland. I haven't called her Freeland. Canada stands ready to, quote, be there for Canadians who live in the U.S. should violence break out. We need to be available. And this trend continues, right? But the U.S. has once again proved the only difference between a politician and a flying pig is the letter F. And if we look at Hong Kong, there's a plan right now from theguardian.com, again, in the notes below, Canada's consul government, I think it's like consulate, I don't know, consul government in Hong Kong and Macau, Macao, I'm clearly not well-traveled to Asian countries, told a parliamentary committee that federal government has drafted plans to assist nearly 300,000 Canadians living in the territory if the security situation deteriorated. We've seen this problem that's been happening in Hong Kong. Well, the government is equipping itself to bring people back. All of these things would be in migration, right? They would only help that scenario. Now, they're under the wrong pretense, but the Canadian government is really looking as part of its plan for immigration to bring people and increase their economic situation. When it comes to Canada to increase that economic situation, these would be two places that we could do that. Of course, if you missed it, there's going to be some reopenings happening, and Ontario's decided to color code our emergency COVID response, right? And they've got this new orange restriction. Based on current trends and the advice of the Chief Medical Officer of Health, we're prepared as of Saturday, November 7th, coming very soon, to move Ottawa, Peel, and York region to restrict level. So they've got this orange as restrict, which means implement, ensure, enhance measures, restrictions, and enforcement while still avoiding closure. So things open versus a red, which is control zone, which is stage 2. And they've just added an extra layer. So instead of 3 stages, now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5? 4 or 5. Right? But there's this talk of delays happening in Toronto, Peel, whatever. Some of these cities are waiting until November 14th, and that's up to them to do that. But I can't wait until this bloody COVID thing is ancient history, man. Those good old days, now I gotta go back to work, but those good old days we used to sit around, we watch Netflix like some fat old pigs. We'll call this era, we gotta really fix this era, we'll call it the Jurassic Pork. That's such a bad joke. Okay, that was a bad joke. Okay, reset, refresh. Here's another one. You fat pigs out there consuming marijuana. Damn pot-bellied pigs. See, that's a good one. I like it anyways. Okay, so as we round into this, a lot of people who are concerned about our market, and there's a lot of our viewers who are. And I don't blame you guys. There's a lot of legitimate reasons to be concerned about our market. Though I'm optimistic, I'm a realist too. Right? I can be real. That's really the only 2 options, though. Optimistic and realist. Aren't those the 2 options? Nobody likes to be a pessimist. Okay. Well, CMHC, here's the article, Financial Post. One article we're going to cover, and first of all, when in the world did Genworth change his name to Sagan? Ugh. Why would you do that? Apparently they did it. They've changed the name to Sagan MI Canada. Like, I don't know. Anyways, they're private. They can do whatever they want. And they're growing, so whatever. Well, here's the article. CMHC loss is Sagan's gain as private sector mortgage insurers sees market share growth. Now, Genworth, now known as Sagan, has now a percentage of default insurance. They have a percentage, quote, probably in the high 30s. So we've got this breakdown, right? You've got CMHC, which is the largest insurer. They're kind of the most important, and and we'll get into why they're unique. But then we got these private ones, including Sagan, right? And so our market share, they say, increased during the quarter as lenders allocated more business to the private sector in response to the underwriting changes implemented by CMHC. There's no question CMHC unilaterally said, you know what? Actually, here's the history. Before June, okay, a report from National Bank said around 33% in 2019 was Sagan's market share, while CMHC accounted for 46% of the premiums written in the industry. That's before, pre-July 1st, when the announcement was made in June. As of July, CMHC has said new insurance applications will be subject to the stricter criteria. If you don't know, they don't want you to do a couple things. One, you need better credit scores. Another, you need the amount of income to be higher. Your debt service ratios needs to be better. And they don't want non-traditional down payments that increased indebtedness. This was the change that happened back in July. And they did it by themselves, unilaterally. This is not an agreed upon thing. We're all, and up until this point, everything is agreed upon. Like, we can all get behind supporting housing and protecting housing. Well, CMHC decided, no, we're going to just do it by ourselves. And that's what they did. The impact meant up to 30% of future applicants might not meet CMHC's guideline. All of a sudden, they're wiping out potentially 30% of their business. A report from credit rating DBRS Morningstar estimated. So what happened, right? What happened? Sagan and Canada Guarantee, these are the 2 other private lenders. CMHC is non-private. This is why it matters. They're kind of like, they protect the housing market, whereas the other ones are private. They're like, you can buy shares in them. Right? They announced they're seeking underwriters to fill, quote, a number of positions. So they're even hiring. They're doing so good, they're hiring. So if you're looking for a job and you really like real estate, maybe that's an opportunity for you. So CMHC, they did all that they could, and they begged. They wrote a letter. What a powerful thing these days. I'm sure that arrived on time. Right? It's like mail-in voting. Oh, let's not go there. They warned in August that the Crown Corporation's market share had taken a hit and that it was approaching the minimum level at which it would be able to protect the mortgage market in a crisis situation. Well, that backfired. Sidell asked lenders to reconsider highly leveraged household lending and to avoid making things worse by, quote, unnecessarily undermining CMHC's market presence. Did they listen? Well, no. Who's going to listen to you? Come on now. You're saying I got an opportunity to grow. Let's do it, baby. Even Sidell got a lot of heat this year. I mean, he's had a rough year. I mean, COVID's not even looking that bad to him these days, right? But I'll tell you, he's a spicy piggy too, though. Guess you can call him a Peppa. Got a little heat in his step. CMHC said in a statement to the Post that it doesn't publicly report its market share, but its target homeowner market, we don't publicly announce it, but it's somewhere between 40 and 50%. That's what they said. So, okay, so it's 40%. Let's be honest, bro. Be honest now. Low 40s for sure. But why is CMHC unique? For two reasons. Number one, they're designed to step in to enable financial stability in the event of a challenge or a crisis, financial instability. And number two, they absorb the market share if private insurers exit the market. So they protect us from, what is this guy's name again? Formerly known as Genworth. Sagan. Pfft, what a name. Ew. I sure hope CMHC, when they change their name, can do a better job than that. And so people would think naturally, like, well, if Sagan, they're just taking all the bad business, right? Like that bottom 30%, they're just jumping over to Sagan. Well, here's the thing. They increased, right? They found, first of all, from a deferral perspective, their deferrals decreased from 14% back in June to 6% at the end of September. And here's some other stats. Fun fact, they had a jump in profit, Sagan, by 12% from earlier this year. Meanwhile, they say that their risky components, these like high risk, so the ones below 680, the kind of the section that CMHC said we're not dealing with anymore, I'm trying to find it here, is just 3% of their business, of their entire portfolio. So people aren't just leaving CMHC to get away from the fact they didn't qualify. I think lenders are just saying, well, screw CMHC, and they're just taking their business, including the good stuff, elsewhere. I think that's what's happening. It is definitely a good investment. In fact, the majority shareholder, Brookfield Business Partners LP, is aiming to buy the remaining 43%. They're going to grow their share percentage. It's like, we want more. Give us more. What a moneymaker. 12% in less than a year. Let's go. I haven't seen money like that since I invested with Bradley and Watson Estates in real estate. Let's do joint ventures, folks. Send me a message. Let's do it up. Let's make some big bucks. These days are scary with COVID. And now we've got the swine flu in Canada. So stay safe, my friends. And remember, fellas, if it's a beautiful woman out there trying to trick you into giving her a pig, don't fall for the bacon. Really not a good joke until you think of No Nut November. If you don't know what that is, you're probably too old. Don't look it up. You don't want to know. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Make sure you get on our investor list if you're not already. We send out high cash flow properties, any of the stuff that us and our joint venture partners don't do. And off-market stuff comes up occasionally as well. You can find that in the link down below. Make sure you hit that like button if you got a lot of value out of our show. Subscribe, and please download the last 5 episodes if you're listening on any of our podcast channels. I had some fun today, guys. I hope you did too. And I will see you guys next time. Have a wonderful weekend. Take care and keep it real.